concerned about those wires that are hanging around. Choose the electrician your neighbors have been for decades. Liberty Electric. Call 541-WIRE. That's 541-9473.
Crawford's Automotive knows that winter driving is hard on vehicles and anything can go wrong. That's why Crawford's is the best place to take your vehicle when work needs to get done. A full-service shop, no matter what your rig needs, from a simple oil change to brakes, a new engine, or transmission, Crawford's Auto will get the job done in good time and at a fair price. Chase Crawford's been working in Missoula on vehicles for decades. His name is on the shop and his reputation is second to none. So when your rig needs some work done, go to Crawford's, 2504 West Broadway. Crawford's Automotive.
Fireside Pizza in Stevensville now has virtual reality interactive 360 headsets and over 35 games to choose from, including golf simulators, free VR experience with $15 entree or pizza purchase. VR gaming is open Thursday and Friday nights and all day Saturday. Enjoy Fireside's famous pizzas, sandwiches, burgers, and local tap beer, exclusively serving locally grown 4-H beef and pork. Great for a date night, friends, and family. Fireside Pizza, Stevensville's iconic eatery, located on Highway 93 across from the Super One under the Big Red Tower.
Hey, thank you for helping make it another terrific year at the Good Food Store. We recognize and truly appreciate just how often so many of you visit the store, and we want you to know that your loyalty allows the Good Food Store to pay it forward to the local partners that make Missoula such a caring, creative, and healthy community. With every organic apple and every espresso you buy, you help contribute to Meals on Wheels, Watson Children's Shelter, the Clarkport Coalition, the Big Sky Documentary Film Festival, the Missoula Symphony, and to many, many others. So thank you from all of us at the Good Food Store.
Marshawn in the backfield. Marshawn goes up over the top. He's in. Touchdown, Seahawks.
The Seahawks hit the road and travel to Philadelphia to take on Carson Wentz and the Eagles in the Wild Card Playoffs. Join Steve Rabel and Dave Wyman this Sunday. Pre-game at noon. Kickoff at 2:40. Right here on the Seahawks Radio Network.
Russell steps up in the pocket. Looks. Still looking. Now he fires. Ball is caught. Touchdown, Seahawks.
Hey y'all, Ryan Tutel here from Tutel Nuanez, and you heard it right there. The Seattle Seahawks in the wild card round on the road at the Philadelphia Eagles this Sunday. Kickoff at 2:40 Mountain Standard Time. We will have the entire game for you, including pre- and post-game, right here on 102.9 ESPN Radio Sunday afternoon. We here at ESPN are proud to be the Seahawks affiliate in Western Montana and excited for their march into the postseason. As always, thanks for listening, and Happy New Year.
Guys, you're not alone. Half of all men have erectile dysfunction. Don't wait for a little blue pill to kick in. Get your sex life back with Gainswave Therapy at New Health, Montana. Gainswave is a safe, 20-minute medical treatment that breaks up blockages and repairs blood vessels. Gainswave is simple, non-invasive, and available at New Health, Montana here in Missoula. For a limited time, you can receive 2 treatments free as part of our pilot program. Visit newhealthmontana.com to learn more.
Hi, I'm here to learn more about guardianships.
Okay. Well, a guardianship is appointed by a court in the event that you are no longer competent or your guardian would have control over decisions that affect your health and well-being.
Okay, so how is a conservatorship different?
Conservatorships apply to your finances, and the court does not need to deem you incompetent prior to relinquishing control to a conservator.
Oh.
If you or someone you know is being exploited, please report to Aging Services Bureau at 844-277-9300 or the Legal Service Developer at 1-800-332-2272. This message sponsored by the DPHHS Aging Service Bureau.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. It's 4 o'clock. Welcome to Tutel and Nuanez, Montana's only statewide sports talk show. Broadcast on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Western Montana and across the state on SWX Television. I like football! Now, sports talk from Montana for Montana. Live from the Kurtz Polaris studio, here is Ryan Tutel and Coulter Nuanez.
And Coulter and I are undefeated In the year of our Lord 2020. I have no idea what that means, but I know that it's true. It is Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Outstanding to be with all of you across western Montana on the radio waves, across the state on the TV waves, and across the world on the internet waves. It is a fun place to be, and we are happy to ring in the new year, day 2 of it, with all of you. Thanks for being with us. If you'd like to call, 329-1899 is the phone number. All guests join us via the Rankage Brothers RV phone line. And if you'd like to listen live, you can do it on the World Wide Web. 1029ESPN.com is where you go. You listen live on the stream. It's brought to us by Opportunity Bank. Your local bank, your opportunity. Today, we're going to go through quite a bit. We got some basketball for you. We got some sound for you. Travis DeCure, a couple of players from the Montana Grizzlies, as they were able to squeak out a 52-50 victory on Monday against Sacramento State, moved their conference record to 2-0. They are on the road at Cedar City tonight against Southern Utah. The Lady Grizz, who are also 2-0, hosting Southern Utah tonight in Missoula. And Montana State, the men got a 2-point win over NAU on Monday, moving their record to 2-0, 63-61 the win there. They play Northern Colorado this evening, and the Lady Cats, well, they're 2-0 as well. In fact, they're the most dominant of the 4 teams. The Montana State Bobcat women, who just shellacked Sacramento State by like 40 on Saturday, and then and still had a strong win on Monday as well. So we'll go through all of that stuff. It's also bowl season, Coulter's favorite time of year. We will go through a little bit of what happened yesterday on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and the bowls that were there. The Rose Bowl, which was a considerable disappointment to myself and my family, and my mother listening on the radio in Africa, trying to just get the game in at 4 a.m., went to bed very exhausted and very sad. So, sorry, Ma, it's the way it goes. Trying to listen overseas doesn't get that easy, especially when your team loses. Great, love the dedication, though, huh? Up in the middle of the night, Jenny Tutel, good for her. We still have people think that the only game left is the national championship bowl game. Oh, no, people. There's, in fact, a bowl game on right this second. The Birmingham Bowl is on between Cincinnati and Boston College, but we got the Gator Bowl, the famous Idaho Potato Bowl, the Armed Forces Bowl. They're still all coming up, so we're not going to preview the games. We're going to discuss which one of these is the choicest of the remainders outside of the national championship, which is not this next Monday, but the following Monday. Okay, so we're a week and a half from the national championship game, quote, national championship. Top of the hour, resolutions. You're going to call us, 329-1899, 329-1899, the phone number. We want to hear, what are your resolutions? We'll share ours. I will try and think of one between now and 5 o'clock.
I knew you hadn't.
Here's the thing. I'm going to get into it later, okay? I've done resolutions before. I like them in a certain way, and then another way, I don't know. You can also hit us up on Twitter at Gus2Tell specifically, and give us your suggestions, what you're doing for your resolutions, or your suggestions for us and what we should do. We will take those suggestions because maybe we could use a little bit of help, okay? Not that you would necessarily know this. Also, 5:30, looking forward to this, Chris Kwasinski is going to join us. He's a sports reporter for the Spectrum and Daily News in St. George, Utah. Specifically, he's a beat writer for the Southern Utah men's basketball team, who, again, are hosting the Montana Grizzlies tonight. So he's going to talk to us, set us up. Southern Utah, 8-4. Wins over Nebraska. They're already 1-0 in conference play over Portland State. They have won, 4 or 5 1 or 2 point games this year already. So they're a very good team, winning close games. So we'll hear a little bit more about Southern Utah from Chris in the next hour as well.
Southern Utah has a very distinct formula since Todd Simon took over. They load up on transfers. They often do not care if those transfers are not eligible until semester. And then they often are, I should say often, I think that most coaches around the Big Sky Conference would tell you that Southern Utah is and has been one of the scariest teams, because they are absolutely one of the most physically talented teams. They have often struggled early in conference play because they add quite literally half of their rotation to the squad at
once they
semester.
Become eligible at semester.
And so they start out Big Sky Conference play with no one having any sort of familiarity with them. But then by the end of the year, I was just actually having this discussion on Twitter, and I actually was doing a little stats breakdown. Since the Big Sky tournament went to a neutral site, Weber State has won 9 Big Sky tournament games. Montana has won 8. the reason that Montana has won less is because they actually got a bye 1 year. Montana went over in Travis DeCuire's, I guess it would have been third season.
Yeah,
the second year in Reno, they lost to the first game to Idaho. But so that kind of hindered that win total. But Weber had 8. Weber had 9, Montana had 8, and Eastern Washington has 5, which is the exact same number as Southern Utah. They've won multiple games of the conference tournament 3 out of the 4 times that it's been at a neutral site. So even though they might, the highest they finished in the league standings is 7th since the neutral site and since Todd Simon took over, but they've been playing in the quarter or semifinals every year. So the formula to have patience has worked, but this year they're better early out the gates, because they haven't done the mass transfer thing. Now all those guys are still on the team, and they have a core, but then they also have added certain great transfers like Cameron Aluaton from Boise State and Dwayne Morgan from UNLV, and they have an Arizona State transfer now that's about to be implemented into the mix. So they have a ton of talent. It'll be interesting to talk to Chris about this, because he's pretty new to the beat, but I think he'll probably have some pretty good insights for us.
It is worth noting, November 29th, I realize it's West Coast Baptist College, okay? Probably not a basketball power. Southern Utah beat WCBC 126-40.
Stupid.
That's an 86-point win, and the largest in the history of the conference. Is that right? The biggest margin of victory?
It's the largest margin of victory in conference history, yes. If the Big Sky wanted to... There's been a renewed effort to get Big Sky men's basketball to break what is the longest streak of no tournament wins of any conference in the country. Every conference in the country, all 32 conferences, except for the Big Sky, 31 out of 32 conferences has seen a team win a game in the NCAA tournament since the last time a Big Sky team won a game in the NCAA tournament in 2006 when Larry Kristoviak's Grizzlies beat Nevada. That's the longest drought of any Division I conference. The Big Sky, and there's been a lot of steps taken towards trying to change that. And I know a lot of people, especially a lot of people that are listening to this show, hate the neutral site tournament because so often the Grizz and the Lady Grizz hosted the tournament. And I know like Montana State, their women, they've won the league 2 out of the last 3 years, but they never got a chance to host the tournament because of the neutral site. But the neutral site was implemented to help the champions have a better chance in the tournament, because then you're used to playing at a neutral site. You're used to not... the Lady Grizz are the perfect example. They rode their home court advantage to NCAA tournament berths multiple times, and they won the Big Sky tournament championship when they arguably weren't the best team in the league, but you can't say that they weren't. They hosted the tournament and then won the league tournament. But there were so many times where, like the last time the tournament was in Missoula, when they came back from 19 points down with 15 minutes to go against Northern Colorado, and they just rode the home crowd all the way to a win, but then they go to the first round of the tournament and lose by 40, that's what the league was trying to avoid. But if the league wanted to really take this thing seriously from a scheduling perspective, everybody talks about how hard it is for Big Sky teams to get games. It is. But also, you can't kill the whole rest of the league by playing whatever the school you just said is. Stop playing Portland Bible College. Stop playing that school. Yeah. Winning games by 70 and 80 points does nothing, because when you win that game, it lowers your RPI. And then if you win or lose other games against your league, you're killing the whole league's RPI by playing those games. So if they wanted to, they should just eliminate playing I don't know. I don't know what the rule would be. That's an NAIA school, right? Maybe you have to be at least NCAA affiliated to be an opponent of a Big Sky school.
I just think it's nice to win by 86. That's all.
I just don't think that does anything for you.
It's just for fun. We're just trying to have
I know. I understand. Let's talk about this last weekend.
Let's do that, Coulter, shall we? Montana played Sacramento State, the men, on Monday night in Missoula. And it didn't look good for the Grizzlies early on. In fact, they scored 20 points in the first half of this basketball game. Sacramento State, they have an outstanding defense. They have one of, if not the top scoring defense in the country. Significantly, that is because they have one of the lowest paces of play in the country. Yeah. So playing great defense is also assisted by playing slowly. When you talk about scoring defense.
They average about 20 seconds per possession.
Yeah. And notably, you can only have, is it 24? Or
30 seconds.
We're still at 30, right?
Game,
okay. Yeah. So it's interesting and fun. Jared Samuelson, by the way, had his biggest day as a Grizz for the second time. 17 points, 8 rebounds, including 3 of 5 from beyond the arc. The big fella stepping out, stretching the floor. And Sacramento State, one of the bigger teams in the Big Sky Conference, and he did an outstanding job really on both ends, but particularly offensively of going out and knocking down some three-point shots. Saeed Pridgett, 14 points, 8 rebounds. But Kendall Manuel, maybe the player of the game in the following sense, 13 points, but hit the final 2 free throws to put the Grizzlies ahead. The Montana put Sacramento State on the line with like 5 seconds to go, and a one-on-one opportunity, missed the free throws. In fact, no, it's 2 shots and missed both of them. And Montana got the ball, forced it up, got the ball all the way on the inbounds pass to half court, which is a big no-no defensively. I mean, you can't let them move the ball all the way up to the half court. Anyway, Kendall Manuel caught the ball, went on a drive, and fell over / was tripped, got the call anyway, went to the line for a one-on-one, made them both, and Sacramento State was not able to cash in a buzzer-beating hoist. So Montana gets the win. They get out of Dodge. And this is what Travis DeCuire had to say about his team following this game. A very, very happy Travis DeCuire.
This group's dialed in right now. We just ended the game 2 nights back-to-back like a team that knows how to finish off close games. A week ago, we struggled with that. 3 weeks ago, we struggled with that. So I think we're going up a little bit, and hopefully we can continue to do that.
I mean, look, this is when it matters, and to be 2-0, especially when you got a young team, very young team still, and had struggled obviously to close games out in some of the non-conference spots. To get this done in back-to-back nights for Montana is really big. Travis asked about how important it is, obviously, to be 2-0, especially when there's such a wide-open schedule or wide-open league right now in the Big Sky Conference.
This is huge. You got to win at home. I tell these guys, you get 1 point for a home win, you get 2, depending on who it is, 3 on a road win, and to me it's 3 points if it's a team that's going to finish in the top half. We don't know who that is right now, so they're all worth 3. But this is a league, it's hard to win on the road, travel is hard, and you got to find a way. You got to take care of your business at home if you're ever going to finish in the top half.
So they did that. They're 2-0, and now Montana has 3 consecutive road games to go. They go Southern Utah, Northern Arizona. No. Who are they? Northern Colorado, and then Eastern Washington. So that is their next 3 all on the road. So huge to get that win on Monday for the Grizzlies.
Well, it's the 4 games in 8 days, followed by then the 5 games in 12 days, 3 of them being on the road, is the hardest stretch that every league team is going to have to endure. Every team in the league had to do it twice last year. I haven't analyzed every single team's schedule, but I know for a fact the Montana schools played their only Monday game of the year on Monday.
This Monday.
This opening stretch is the hardest stretch. And you can look at it 2 ways depending on the men or the women, because it's going to be 5 games in 12 days, but the women are going to have 3 in a row at home, whereas the men are going to have 3 in a row on the road. So if Montana can emerge from this stretch in decent shape, they'll be in decent shape 1/4 of the way through the conference schedule. I'm not taking too much out of these victories by any of the 4 teams. I do think that Northern Arizona women are better. The women's league has had a couple doormats that have been historic, epic doormats. Northern Arizona and Southern Utah have been so bad the last couple years. And that's why it was such a referendum that the Lady Grizz lost to Southern Utah in the conference tournament last year, because Southern Utah was like a 5-win team 4 years in a row.
Yes.
And but NAU with Lori Payne, who's a Montana native, she's from Havre, they're a lot better than they have been, and they were competitive against both Montana and Montana State. But what weird games. I mean, the announced attendance at the 2 NAU games was 200. It was like 204 and 208. And announced attendance is almost always exaggerated. So how many people were actually there? Like when you watched it on the live stream, depending on what angle they were shown at, there was no people in the stands. None. Like the only people that were there were the people that were sitting on the press row, which is just crazy. But sometimes I think that can work to your advantage. Because if you're Montana State, you're used to playing in front of thousands of people. So playing in front of no one, I mean, it's weird because it messes up the sight lines. Yeah. There's no energy in the arena. I mean, what a weird thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, it's always hard to go on the road and get wins. But I do think, man, I was talking to you at the game on Monday. The best part about college sports is you never know who's going to emerge. And there's going to be some young men and some young women in this league that emerge. But as of right now, I'm just salty about covering this league this year because we've been spoiled. The last couple of years, I shouldn't say especially on the men's side. On both sides, there's been great players.
Yeah.
Really good players.
Like all-time, all-conference types of players.
Totally. Yeah. And the way I always say it is, like, we're fortunate enough that we get press passes, but I always describe it as who are the guys and the girls in the league that I would pay money to go see? And I mean, obviously, I'm a sports guy, so I would go pay money to see a lot of games. But who's a big ticket buy, right? There used to be like 13 guys in the league that were really big ticket type players, and those guys, there's just not as many of those guys anymore. And I also think that it's skewed because there's so much mystery around Montana State still. They went 2-0, but they still have a first-year head coach and, by and large, a brand-new roster. and Montana, you like the potential. And the one thing I will say about the Sac State game, and you heard it there with Coach DeCure, Montana, they communicated a lot better down the stretch. And I think the hardest part about watching the men Grizz leading up to this weekend was just how clunky they looked. They just weren't locked in. They don't flow.
Yep.
And make no mistake, Monday was a horribly grotesque basketball game. I mean, there was no flow to it whatsoever.
Yeah.
But Montana looked better down the stretch, especially communicating defensively, and they were able to close out the game. And I think that it will be a big building block for the team.
Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Jared Samuelson, as we mentioned, 17 points, 8 rebounds, a huge game for him. He was asked about the last 2 minutes and what it was like playing in the last 2 minutes of stadium that what was about 3,800 announced attendance on Monday night, and it got loud at Dahlberg Arena coming down the stretch.
It was fun. The crowd here was amazing. It was loud. Come down to the wire like that and end like that with us on top. Kendall hitting those clutch free throws. That was a fun day.
Speaking of clutch free throws, Coulter, you asked Kendall Manuel about that very thing, and if he gets nervous in a big spot standing there at the free throw line, this is what he said, and then he carried on a little bit about the second free throw. It's a 1-on-1 situation, so you got to make the first one to get the second one. Here's what he had to say about being nervous.
No, I feel like I played enough college basketball to kind of calm myself down, and especially in those type of situations, I feel comfortable. And I actually went over to Coach Trav, and I said, like, hey, should I just miss this? Because there was 2 seconds left, and if they touch it, they would have had to heave it across the court, and either way, it was going to be a 3-point shot. So I just told him, hey, Coach, should I just miss it? And he was like, yeah, just make sure you hit the rim. And I tried to miss it, and it still went in because I shot it flat and tried to miss it, but I guess it still wanted to go in.
So he hits the first one, tries to get it, the second one to rim off, and can't. I mean, that's when you know you got it going on from the free throw line. Let me tell you, when I almost thought I was wrong. Like, it was clearly a 1-on-1 opportunity. There was only 9 team fouls on Southern Utah. And I thought maybe the scoreboard was wrong or something like that. Nobody went to the rebound block for Montana. Right. Kendall Manuel stood on the line for the front end of a 1-on-1 in a tie basketball game alone. I mean, how much confidence is that a guy's going to put it in the hoop? Because the other 4 guys were already set back to defend as Travis DeCure was setting up the sort of what he knew was going to be the inbounds play or whatever. And then, of course, he tries to miss the second one. It doesn't. Pretty funny there out of Kendall Manuel. But huge win. Here's the thing. I'm with you, Coulter, on this. I don't take anything. By the way, Montana State, we should say, too, they had a lead for basically most of the game against Northern Arizona on Monday night. And Northern Arizona just kept cutting into it, ultimately tying the game late. And Layden Ricketts, who had been ice cold, goes out and makes his 1 3-pointer, in the last minute of the game to give him a lead, and then ends up at the line, hits 2 free throws, scores the last 5 points of the game, and Montana State wins by 2 over NAU. I'm with you. I'm not sitting here watching this team going, just wait because it's going to turn a corner. I think they are going to improve, no doubt about it. If there's any sort of parabolic ascension where it's not just linear, but it's what do I want to say, to a power, to an exponent,
right?
Of improvement, that's what we won't find out. If it's not that, I don't know how good either of these teams are ultimately going to be. But like you said, in a league that ultimately is down compared to what it's been the last couple of years, anybody can go out and do it. And being 2-0 to start is massive. It is just gigantic, especially when, as you pointed out, this is the toughest 5-game stretch in terms of the scheduling side of it that these teams are going to have this year.
It's just so crazy how long the season is and all the things that can affect both your improvements and your erosion. I mean, more than any other sport, chemistry is so essential in the sport of basketball. When you're talking about young kids, that's even more fragile. And how many times have we seen teams show up, especially now at these neutral sites, where you might be coming in as the 4 or the 5 seed, and you might have won 13 or 14 league games, but you are not playing well at that moment.
Right.
Like Weber State has stumbled into the conference tournament each of the last 2 years, and they've had short stays at the conference tournament, including getting absolutely destroyed by Montana this last year, because it just didn't seem like they even wanted to be there. Who wants to keep playing? I mean, look at Idaho a couple years ago. They had one of the great seasons they've had in the last 20 years, and just because of whatever was going on in that locker room, they straight up didn't show up, and as the 2 seed, they lost to the 10 seed in Southern Utah.
Yep.
So navigating not only the basketball portion of this, but just the volatility that comes with the fragility of the chemistry of a basketball team, that's going to be the key. And so it is good to get 2 wins under your belt, but I think that you can never get too high or too low. You can't let 2 wins or 2 losses lead into anything else. You have to start over every week. But you got to win at home, just like Coach DeCuire said. And I think that's big time for both the Grizz and the Bobcats. And it's even more big time no matter who you beat. Even if NAU and Southern Utah are going to finish in the bottom half of the league, which I expect that to be the case on the women's side, you still swept a road trip. And if you sweep road trips,
right,
it's like winning an extra game, right? Because even if you win all your games at home and you split on the road, you're going to be a top 4 seed.
2 minutes.
They're all worth 2, if not 3, as Travis DeCuire said, right? So
no doubt.
One final thing here, Coulter, before we get into some bull stuff, but you talked about maybe some emerging players in this league. You wouldn't have had this girl in the top 3 or 4 players on her own team to say the best player in the conference for the week. But the Montana Lady Grizz sophomore Abby Anderson is your Big Sky Conference Women's Basketball Player of the Week. In the road sweep that the Lady Grizz just completed, she averaged 17.5 points and 6.5 rebounds for the Lady Grizz. Abby Anderson did. And congratulations to her winning the Big Sky Conference Player of the Week. By the way, it's a sweep for the Grizzlies. Saeed Pridgett winning it for the men. Maybe a little bit more expected. That's his 4th one in his career, and obviously he is first team type of guy coming into this season. But pretty remarkable for Montana to sweep the awards, and for it to be Abby Anderson as opposed to Eddie Mackenzie Johnson, Gabby Harrington, whoever it might be, Sophia Stiles, etc.
Yeah, I mean, Pridgett had a 27-10 against NAU, and that really boosted him because even though he was Montana's second leading scorer on Monday against Sac State, he wasn't good. He missed 10 of his first 13 shots. He really struggled.
He struggled. A lot of guys did. Certainly, Jared Samuelson was the player of the game for Montana in terms of the whole for the Grizzlies. By the way, also we should point out, without Yagi Selchuk, Yagi played, I think, 27 minutes against
20
NAU,
plus for sure, yeah.
And then was a DMP against Southern Utah. We asked Coach DeCuire about it. He was basically mum, but clearly this was tweaked something and decided to give him a rest and not put him out there. There was certainly not a disciplinary thing or anything like that. So we'll keep an eye on him and if he's able to go tonight, if he's back out there. But going again, a big team like Sacramento State, not having him there, I think if you would have pulled the Montana coaching staff in their heart of hearts before the game, they would have felt like this was a pretty tough win for them to go ahead and get, even at home, given the matchup that they were facing and all of that without Yagi. But they got it anyway, and again, Jared Samuelson getting it done.
Right, and they didn't play. I mean, Mac Anderson played 1 minute. Derek Carter-Hollinger played, I think, 5 minutes. So the other big guys were non-existent. They had to ride Pridgett and Samuelson all the way. Those guys are not big, so for them to be able to, I mean, they're not big compared to 6'9" Josh Patton, who's one of the best big guys in the league for Sac State. So, and on the other side, you don't want to take anything away from Anderson because it was a great performance, but if you watch Sac State play, they press the whole game, and so the girl who is going to be the end of the press, the one who's not handling the ball against that style, is going to get endless free layups if the guards don't turn the ball over. That's what Anderson did. She took advantage of it, no doubt. I mean, it's striking to see someone that was averaging, I think, 5 points per game in her career. I mean, I think she made more field goals over this weekend than she did all of last season. So it's definitely an extreme breakout performance by Abby Anderson. I do think she's a young lady with a lot of talent, but also you got to look at the matchup too. I mean, she feasted on what the matchup provided, but either way, you got to make the shots. She did it.
Well, she did it, and you know, again, she's not one of the heralded people. I mean, she's starting, so obviously she, you know, Shannon Schwan is seeing something in her, and what she's done here early is impressive. But there's a lot of you know, women on that team that whose names would rise at the top of the list if you were just talking about them before Abby Anderson. So it's you know, good for her. Quick break. New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, fraught with football. What went well, what didn't? We'll get to all of it right after this. Hey, it's the new year. With all the resolutions, one of the best things you can do is starting fresh by starting clean. A clean environment will help inspire you to do great things. So start fresh and clean inside your car. Take pride in your ride and schedule a full interior detail with Shine Auto Detailing. Most of their clients say they make their car cleaner than when it was new. How about that? Shine Auto Detailing. Schedule online now, shineautodetailing.net. Mention you heard it with Coulter and myself here on Tutel Nuanez. They'll give you a $20 winter windshield treatment for a safer drive for free. They'll throw it right in. Just say you heard it on the radio with Tutel Nuanez. Go to shineautodetailing.net right now to schedule shineautodetailing.net.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, ooh, pump it up.
Don't cook dinner. Stop by the Town Pump Deli and pick up a 2-piece chicken and Chojo's with ranch for only $3.49. Want a great beer to go with it? Grab a 12-pack of Modelo for $11.99. Town Pump, right down the road.
Town Pump, right down the road. Pump it up. Oh, yeah.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters, and you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
Hey, it's Coulter, and I'm here with Catherine from The Advocates. If you've been in a car accident or need help dealing with the insurance companies, you should give The Advocates a call. They can tell you if you have a case right over the phone.
That's right. It doesn't cost anything to call, and we'd be happy to talk to you and assess your situation. You don't want to have to deal with contacting the insurance companies and setting up a claim. We can do that for you. We take the hassle out of the process, so you can just focus on getting better.
There you go, folks. If you've been injured in an accident, give The Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve The Advocates.
Welcome to today's lottery drawing. And today's winning numbers are not yours, not yours, and another number that's not yours. And the final number is not yours.
When it comes to having money, don't rely on luck. Brew your own coffee at home instead of buying that latte. Brown bag it to work instead of ordering it. Go to feedthepig.org for more free ideas on how to save. Feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
Most of my family, they never graduated high school, so I'm trying to break that barrier. My daughter, Brooklyn, was also a motivation for me to go back to school. Every day after work, went straight to school, and it paid off.
At age 26, Kareem finished his high school diploma.
I could not have done it alone. I see the future is really bright for me.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Hey there, Coulter Nuanez from your favorite daily sports talk show, Tutel Nuanez. I'm here with Tom from Aspen Sound. Tom, last winter I got a sweet car starter. It's something I think everybody needs.
You know, Coulter, I couldn't agree more, and my wife sure thinks so too. We've got a lot of sweet deals. We actually have it capable now where you can start it from your phone from anywhere you'd like. We have two-way remotes that'll confirm to you the vehicle started all the way down to our basic package starting at just $299 installed. Come on in and check us out.
Feel the music at Aspen Sound.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good evening, Ryan Tutel, Colton Nuanez. Here's some sports news for you. The Big Sky Conference basketball schedule opened this week, and all 4 college teams from Montana moved to 2-0 as they swept the opening weekend. The Montana men overcame scoring just 20 points in the first half to emerge with a 52-50 win over Sacramento State, and they earned a 79-72 win over Northern Arizona on Saturday. 2 days after Montana State drilled Sac State and Bozeman, the Bobcats used a Layden Ricketts three-pointer as the difference in a 63-61 win over NAU. On the women's side, the Lady Grizz followed up their win at Northern Arizona Saturday with a 64-60 win at Sacramento State on Monday. The Montana State women are also now 2-0 after posting a 72-64 win at NAU on the heels of an 85-48 blowout of Sac State.
Grizz basketball players also swept the first Conference Player of the Week awards as Lady Grizz sophomore forward Abby Anderson won her first career weekly award. She averaged 17.5 points and 6.5 rebounds per game. Senior Saeed Pridgett won the men's weekly award for the 4th time in his career by averaging 20.5 points, 9 rebounds, and 2.5 steals per game in 2 Grizz wins. He scored 27 points and grabbed 10 rebounds in a 79-72 win over NAU.
Tonight, the Lady Grizz host Southern Utah at the Adams Center with tip at 7 o'clock while the men are on the road in Cedar City. Montana State takes on Northern Colorado.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
Montana Television. Right now, the Birmingham Bowl. I think I'm required by law to say the Ticket Smarter Birmingham Bowl is on. And Cincinnati, the number 21 ranked team in the nation, is beating down BC 24-0. Now, Boston College has a new coach coming in. I don't know if he's coaching in this game or if a lot of times there's like an interim coach and all that kind of thing. But Cincinnati, man, is a good football team. I mean, they're beating down a bowl team from the ACC. And I know the ACC, you can say what you want, and it's all true. It's not good on the in the Power 5 sense. But to just come in and just smack, I mean, Cincinnati would be the second or third best team. They would be, to me, right with Virginia in terms of who they were in the ACC this year. That's an aside. That's for free. Coulter, the last couple of days, there's been about 10 games. All the rest of the New Year's 6 games got played yesterday. The Sugar Bowl was not very interesting to me, although Dante Olson was there receiving an award with a group of other players, and I know that a contingent of Montana football folks, administrators, along with Dante, were there, and so that is very cool. But Georgia, 26-14 win over Baylor. Baylor just undermanned. No chance they were going to beat Georgia in that football game. The Rose Bowl stinks. Really stinks. You can't turn the ball over 4 times, and that'd be -3 in turnovers, generally speaking, and win a football game. Montana, saw this on the Twitter, thanks to whoever sent this over, by the way. Montana racked up more yards against Oregon. Let me say this differently. Montana got more yards against Oregon than Oregon did in this game. I think that's right. I think I'm saying that right. I'll try and check.
Well, yeah, because Oregon had the ball for like 19 minutes. I mean, Wisconsin sat on the clock the whole game.
And they kept the ball and they moved the ball, and they were. I thought Oregon was going to be dominant on the offensive line, and they weren't. They were probably better, but it was pretty even. The line play between Oregon and Wisconsin, and Wisconsin straight up ran the football. I mean, I thought they could have run the football, could have run it even more than what they ended up doing, but they were moving the ball almost at will and doubled up Oregon across the board, and then turned the doggone thing over and over and over again.
I think it's so funny, like the cliches and the stereotypes that are attached to certain programs, and how even when you watch the game, people refuse to acknowledge anything else. Like, people just think Wisconsin just go double tight end I formation and run it down your throat. I thought that Wisconsin's schemes, particularly defensively, are so awesome. They're so high level, and I just don't think that people think of that. They just think of them as like this blue collar Midwestern team, big offensive line, which they still have, great running backs, which they still have, but they don't get a lot of credit. I mean, all their pre-snap motions and some of their weird formations that they were running and stuff. Awesome. I thought they were really good. I thought they crossed up Justin Herbert. They had him completely crossed up for almost all of the game. But then a great moment for him to score the game-winning touchdown. And
He ran for 3 touchdowns in this game, which was the big.
The biggest knock on Herbert is that he has more often than not wilted in big moments during his career. Testament to him, the fact that he's given himself big moments often throughout his career.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great cap to his career, considering that they were 4-8 his first year. Mark Helfrich gets fired, and Herbert sort of ascends, could have left, and then, this year I think that even with 11 wins, it was a by and large disappointing season for Oregon because they had real national championship and playoff, college football playoff aspirations, and they didn't quite get there.
They won 12 games.
Loss to 12 games after the Rose Bowl win. Yeah. So, they lost to Auburn early, and then they lost to Arizona State, right, in the Pac-12, and I think that both of those really killed their playoff hopes. But it was cool for Oregon to go out on top like that, but also a heartbreaker for Wisconsin. But I think that people need to move beyond the cliches, right? Like everybody talks about Alabama doing the same thing too. Alabama runs the straight spread now.
Yeah, Alabama's just a chuck it everywhere that you want type of football team. Speaking of Alabama, I did watch the Citrus Bowl, and to see how much better Alabama is than Michigan, not just any game could be a 20-point win by basically any team, and that doesn't mean that they're just so much better or whatever. And Alabama is not as good. They're just not as good as Ohio State and Clemson and LSU. Although they played LSU tough, but they did lose at home. But to watch the speed guys run by everybody wearing maize and blue as if they are statues anchored down into cement on the yard, it's just remarkable. If there's a catch made by a wide receiver who's got more than about, 5 feet of space, it's a house call, an absolute house call. And it was remarkable. He came out in the second half, and it was just, no chance. No chance. It looked like Usain Bolt. He doesn't get out of the blocks right away sometimes. In the first 20 meters, there's he's not even in the lead, and then, pulls even, and then at some point, 80 meters in, he's just coasting. That's what Alabama was to Michigan. Michigan, man, I don't know, man.
More bowl wins this century so far for Rutgers than Michigan. How about that?
Yeah, well, Rutgers was good at one stage.
They were. This is why I have such a hard time with all of this stuff, though. Because the fact that there's not a real playoff, I know Georgia is better than Baylor.
Mm-hmm. No,
so I don't care to watch it because they're just gonna win.
But here's the thing: was
there any chance that Michigan was going to beat Alabama? Any?
No.
None.
No.
So why not give me a playoff?
Michigan was up 16-14 and a half.
So here's the thing: you know that I'm with you on the playoffs. You know that I'm with you. And so I'm not arguing that point. Here's what I'm saying: is in any given bowl season, there's what I'm estimating 40 games. It's not that many, but there's close to 40 bowls.
Right.
Okay. There's a handful of them that are absolutely circle your deal, including the national semifinals. But then a couple, I thought the Rose Bowl was a hugely intriguing matchup between those two teams.
Definitely.
And I thought Texas-Utah was going to be a really interesting, fun game. It turned out not to be. Texas just burned the house down.
Well, we talked about last segment about basketball teams that are ready to be done playing. Yep. How ready was Utah to be done playing? As soon as the playoff picture was closed for them?
As soon as they lost the Pac-12 championship game, this thing was done. So you get those games that are clunkers, even though you had them as games that you might want to watch. But then if you're paying attention and you're not doing anything, to have a football game on that all of a sudden might get real, like Navy Kansas State, which was an unbelievable game. Nobody cares about Navy and Kansas State by and large. Okay, I get it, and I don't. I got no, I got nothing of interest of either of these schools to me particularly. But the game was great. It was a 2017 game that should have been won, and by Kansas State and then wasn't. Heck, watching Western Michigan lose to Western Kentucky, very disappointing to me as a Bronco alum.
Western Michigan on 3rd and 1 does an RPO, which the quarterback rightly pulls it out of the stomach of the running back and has wide open spaces, 60 seconds left to go in a tie football game. On the opposing 30, on the Hilltoppers 30-yard line, you know what he does, Coulter? Rolling out, trips and falls over. 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. They go for it on 4th down, don't get it. The Hilltoppers get the ball back, move down the field, have a 57-yard field goal attempt, and there's 12 men on the field for Western Michigan. So now an untimed down from 52, bang away, and Western Kentucky wins. Great football game. I don't even know which bowl it was.
Oh, man. I mean, there's just so much I want to say, but I just don't want to start off the new year just like a complete curmudgeon.
Well, I mean,
when you watch the Rose Bowl and they pan out over the skyscape and the stadium is full and it's this beautiful day.
Yeah.
I love the pageantry and I love the ceremony of it and I love the tradition of it. But it's also just impossible for me to think this is exactly the same thing as professional sports, and we are pinning it as amateur sports through the lens of some sort of institution of higher education so that we can exploit an alumni group for their money. It's crazy. It's just pro football. I would love it if we would just call it that. Call it pro football with an age limit, because that's exactly what it is.
But here's the thing. That's always. I mean, okay. I'm not saying no to any of that you said. But that doesn't. When I'm watching the Rose Bowl, I'm loving every second of it. And I will say,
I love the entertainment value of it. It's just so, man. The totality of the system is broken for many different reasons. It's not just the broad stroke of the absence of a playoff. It's not just the inequality when it comes to money. It's a very different system. Every tier of college football that you go down, and I just wish that it was painted like it actually is. Because people love this stuff because of the pageantry and because of the association, but they neglect to truly fathom the amount of money. And that's the part that it drives me crazy.
Okay. Doesn't hurt me.
You're wrong.
I'm all into it. Speaking of being into it, we got one on right now. We got 4 more coming up before the, quote, national championship. We got to tell the people all about it. Which one are you looking forward to the most, Coulter? I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this right after this. Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Hey, the Polaris New Year's sales event is on, and now is the time to find your perfect ride at Kurtz Polaris. With financing as low as 3.99% APR for 36 months and savings up to $3,500. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula and on Highway 83 in Sealy. The mountains are full of snow. They sure are right now. And Kurtz has the best machines, apparel, and accessories to take full advantage of the season. Online at KurtzPolaris.com. The most fun you can have in snow. Kurtz Polaris. Winter awaits.
'Tis the season for a festive holiday feast at the Montana Club with mouthwatering dishes like our cranberry brie walnut tarts and pork Diane, or savor our Chardonnay salmon or blackened shrimp fillet. Be sure to wrap up your celebration with our decadent pecan rum raisin cake, all available for a limited time only through January 5th. See the full menu at montanaclub.com. Happy holidays from all of us at the Montana Club on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
When the mountains are calling, a Floco Mocha is just what you need to hit the road. Florence Coffee serves an exclusive, rich, all-natural chocolate blend for a mocha like no other. Top it off with real whipped cream, and you're set for whatever your day has in store. Get your Floco Mocha at any of our locations throughout western Montana and go to FlorenceCoffeeCo.com.
The best flavor under the big sky. Florence Coffee Company.
Marshawn in the backfield. Marshawn goes up over the top. He's in. Touchdown, Seahawks.
The Seahawks hit the road and travel to Philadelphia to take on Carson Wentz and the Eagles in the Wild Card Playoffs. Join Steve Rabel and Dave Wyman this Sunday. Pre-game at noon. Kickoff at 2:40. Right here on the Seahawks Radio Network.
Russell steps up in the pocket. Looks. Still looking. Now he fires. Ball is caught. Touchdown, Seahawks.
Hey, y'all. Ryan Tutel here from Tutel and Nuanez, and you heard it right there. The Seattle Seahawks in the wild card round on the road at the Philadelphia Eagles this Sunday. Kickoff at 2:40 Mountain Standard Time. We will have the entire game for you, including pre- and post-game, right here on 102.9 ESPN Radio Sunday afternoon. We here at ESPN are proud to be the Seahawks affiliate in Western Montana and excited for their march into the postseason. As always, thanks for listening and Happy New Year.
Welcome to today's lottery drawing. And today's winning numbers are not yours, not yours, and another number that's not yours. And the final number is not yours.
When it comes to having money, don't rely on luck. Brew your own coffee at home instead of buying that latte. Brown bag it to work instead of ordering it. Go to feedthepig.org for more free ideas on how to save. Feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
Most of my family, they never graduated high school, so I'm trying to break that barrier. My daughter, Brooklyn, was also a motivation for me to go back to school. Every day after work, went straight to school, and it paid off.
At age 26, Kareem finished his high school diploma.
I could not have done it alone. I see the future is really bright for me.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
If it matters to Missoula, it matters to us. Ryan Tutel and Colter Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio.
15 minutes. We want your calls. 329-1899. New Year's resolutions. That's what we're looking for. Yours are suggestions for Colter and myself. It is Tutel and Nuanez. We are broadcasting on ESPN Radio.
Colter needs reasons
SWX
to live
Montana
right now.
Television. You can also go ahead and check us out on the Twitters at 1029 ESPN on Twitter and Instagram. At Skyline Sports MT and at Gus Tutel on Twitter right now. At Gus Tutel also, if you don't want to call, you want to just tweet your New Year's resolutions, you can do it there. And we will get it and we will discuss here in about 15 minutes from now. But Colter, right now, I got great news. I thought I was sad yesterday at a point because I thought the bowl season was basically over except for the national championship, but I was so wrong. There's another 5 games, one going on right now, an absolute barn burner. 24-6 at the end of 3, Cincinnati beating Boston College. So Boston College needs a mere 2 touchdowns, couple 2-point conversions and field goal to get back into this thing. I like their chances. Now, granted that this game is already, a quarter from being completed. Which of these bowl games to you is most watchable? And I cannot wait to hear what you have to say about this. The Ticketmaster Birmingham Bowl, which is right now, the TaxSlayer Gator Bowl between Indiana and Tennessee. Tennessee, who lost to Georgia State and then lost to BYU, but then pulled it out of the fire. How about the Tennessee Volunteers making it bowl eligible? Famous Idaho Potato Bowl between Ohio and Nevada over there in Boise. We could drive to it. We could go watch it in person, Colter. The Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl between Southern Miss and Tulane, and then the Lending Tree Bowl. They didn't even try to make it something other than about the sponsor here, the Lending Tree Bowl, which is this Monday between Louisiana and Miami of Ohio. Louisiana, like Louisiana Tech, Louisiana?
No, Louisiana. They used to be called Louisiana Lafayette.
Oh, yeah.
They dropped that for whatever reason. It's the Raging
Cajuns. I can tell you the game that I'm the least interested in, and that's Southern Miss Tulane. I don't know why. I'm just not interested in it. I'm always about the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. I think it's one of the great bowls that exists, and the fact that you got a MAC team versus Nevada Reno, the Wolfpack and the Bobcats, I'm into that. That is market can't miss TV. You get the Raging Cajuns and another MAC team, Miami of Ohio, on a Monday night. I'm into that as well. Colter, to you, what's your favorite of all of these? Indiana, Tennessee, Big Ten, SEC?
I mean, I'm rapidly scrolling through the list of the top 100 NFL prospects for the NFL because my choice will be whoever has the first player listed. And of these teams, A.J. Dillon, running back from Boston College, currently listed as the number 43 prospect in next year's NFL draft. So I'm picking that game because I only want to watch the guys that are going to go to the league.
Well, it's on right now. And he's not doing much because his team is losing by 18 as they head into the fourth quarter. I don't know what to tell you about that. A.J. who?
A.J. Dillon.
A.J. Dillon. The mighty 43 is pretty good. I mean, that's a high second-round pick.
This list is crazy. Every single one of these guys is from Georgia, Alabama, LSU, and Clemson.
How many teams should the playoff be?
16.
See, I think it should be 12. It should be 12 teams. Top 4 with a bye.
Okay.
And do it like that. You were always screaming at me about the money associated with this thing, and that all you need to know is how much money these programs invest, and then therefore you know who's good, and that's why it's all meaningless and never worth watching.
Yes.
You're wrong about this. The teams that put a ton of money into it are, let's put it like this, the teams that don't have the money put into it almost certainly can't be good.
Right.
But there's a lot of schools that put a ton of money into it that are also not good.
Texas A&M spent the most.
Texas A&M, right. At Florida State.
Totally.
Texas.
So how is that compelling me to watch this? I want to watch the teams that spend more money suck? That sounds even worse.
No, the reason is because you're always sitting here going, I don't need to watch because I already know who's going to win. That's what you say to me all the time, but you don't. There's a bunch of teams that should be good and aren't good, and then there's a bunch of teams that should be good and are good. And you would have never guessed, right, that Alabama, short of not being in the national championship, was not going to be in the playoff. And you would have never guessed that. I mean, you would have guessed certainly that Clemson and Ohio, but that LSU might be there. Now they're a blue blood amongst blue bloods. Okay, their LSU has been football, ground jewels for a long, long time. I'm not saying they haven't been, but also coming into this year to say that LSU, who was perennially, I don't know, a top 14 to top 8 or 7 type of football team, was going to be the number one team and the leader in this thing, you wouldn't have known. You wouldn't have guessed that. You wouldn't have filled that out. And so that's why I'm saying it does matter. It is interesting. And watching the Iron Bowl and how that played out, or LSU Alabama and how that played out to get us to this point, that stuff was all interesting to me.
Well, I think that is interesting. I think the addition of the best quarterback that they've had in 20 years or maybe ever in Joe Burrow is a phenomenally interesting story. I think Ed Orgeron and his volatility that then somehow blossomed into the
just
number
being
one,
the right guy in the right place.
The number one team in the country. I think that's fascinating. I like the best of the best. I watched the Rose Bowl intently yesterday. I liked it. I like the New Year's Six Bowls. I like those. I just wish there was like something more after that.
Totally.
Like I would love to see Oregon, after winning that game and gutting it out, play again. And play someone. Wisconsin's very good, but play Georgia, play Alabama, play LSU, play Clemson, play Ohio State. I would love to see that.
I had a small epiphany yesterday, okay? And I don't think that people, when they hear this initially, are going to like this, but I like this, okay? We are so accustomed to, we have our seeds, and the top seeds get the buys, and they get the the advantage and all that, and then so on, and you play your tournament, whatever it is. That's all fine. The Rose Bowl is the one bowl that I can say sincerely has not lost any of the shine to me in virtue of me knowing that there's a playoff in addition to it. And knowing that in prior to the, quote, playoff, it would have been Ohio State playing against Oregon in that football game as opposed to Wisconsin. Okay? And even though, yes, I have Wisconsin, family roots, I still will watch the Rose Bowl. I don't care who's playing in the Rose Bowl, and I don't care if they're just the, quote, second best team in their conference or whatever. I think it still is a great game, and the setting and the history of it all, I love it.
Don't you think that it's lost less prestige than the other bowls because a Pac-12 team has rarely made the playoffs, and we just know that if a Big Ten team makes it, it's just going to be Ohio State?
I mean...
That was your Burn Street Bistro Burn of the Week.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's a lot of the other bowls we know it's going to be one of the two best teams in the Pac-12 and one of the two best teams from the Big Ten, and they have not delineated out of that. And mostly it's just because the best picks still are from the conferences. And
Georgia Baylor did 0 for me last night. 0. In fact, I would actually say that the fact that it was the Sugar Bowl actually made it a more, like if it would have just been Georgia Baylor, I would have been even less interested than I was. Because it was the Sugar Bowl, it added an element to it. Here's all I'm saying, though. Rather than creating a tournament, be it 12 teams, be it 8 teams, whatever, that has your 1 through 12 seeds and then you set them up and you play the games, in order to keep the bowls, just let the winner of the Pac-12 play the winner of the Big Ten in the Rose Bowl in a tournament game, and that team moves on. And yes, you will not have a seeding that matches the perceived rankings that you would have, but the bowls would remain intact in the way that they have always been. The tradition, the pattern, you're still going to say Rose Bowl champion, and it makes sense in the history of the deal, and then you move on. And if it's number 2 playing number 5 in the first round of a quote-unquote playoff, so be it. So be it. That doesn't bother me. I'm not saying that's the way that it has to be. I think it would be fun, though, if in the Sugar Bowl you just had the best SEC team against the best Big 12 team. And then, are there going to be a couple of 8 or 9 or 10 seeds that end up finding their way into the second round of the playoffs that wouldn't have been there? Probably. Sure. Okay. They're probably still not going to be there after the second weekend, but I think that would be a lot of fun. And then you don't have to worry even about the numbers associated with it. You just get the bowl games, but it's within the context of a tournament.
Yeah, I mean, that would be my biggest. I would advocate for that exact solution.
31-6, Cincinnati up on Boston College, the Birmingham Bowl. Spreading out now, 25-point lead for the Bearcats. Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Hey, Happy New Year. Call us, 329-1899, 329-1899. Tell us your resolutions or tell us the resolutions that we should have. We will take your calls right after this.
Hey, thank you for helping make it another terrific year at the Good Food Store. We recognize and truly appreciate just how often so many of you visit the store, and we want you to know that your loyalty allows the Good Food Store to pay it forward to the local partners that make Missoula such a caring, creative, and healthy community. With every organic apple and every espresso you buy, you help contribute to Meals on Wheels, Watson Children's Shelter, the Clarkport Coalition, the Big Sky Documentary Film Festival, the Missoula Symphony, and to many, many others. So thank you from all of us at the Good Food Store.
More bedrooms, a big yard, better commute. Whatever your reason to buy a new home, it's the right reason. In a tough housing market, the smartest thing you can do is pre-qualify for a loan before you start looking. Farmers State Bank makes it easier than ever to start the loan process with online checklists, forms, and calculators. Your dream home is out there. Get started today at farmersebank.com. Farmers State Bank, an equal housing lender and member FDIC.
At the Desperado, you put wings in a basket, burgers on a plate, and beer in a mug. But what about bowls, you say? What about them? At the Desperado, there's only one place for bowls, and that's on the big screen TV. Cotton, orange, Fiesta, rose, peach, sugar. If it's a thing, it's a bowl. And if it's a bowl, it's on at the Desperado. All leading up to the big national championship game. Okay, so that's not a bowl, but yes, it's still on. Enjoy all the bowls with delicious plates, baskets, and mugs. Find your seat at the Desperado Sports Tavern on South Russell across from the Y.
Marshawn in the backfield. Marshawn goes up over the top. He's in. Touchdown, Seahawks.
The Seahawks hit the road and travel to Philadelphia to take on Carson Wentz and the Eagles in the Wild Card Playoffs. Join Steve Rabel and Dave Wyman this Sunday. Pre-game at noon. Kickoff at 2:40. Right here on the Seahawks Radio Network.
Russell steps up in the pocket. Looks. Still looking. Now he fires. Ball is caught. Touchdown, Seahawks.
Hey, y'all, Ryan Tutel here from Tutel Nuanez, and you heard it right there. The Seattle Seahawks in the wild card round on the road at the Philadelphia Eagles this Sunday. Kickoff at 2:40 Mountain Standard Time. We will have the entire game for you, including pre- and post-game, right here on 102.9 ESPN Radio Sunday afternoon. We here at ESPN are proud to be the Seahawks affiliate in Western Montana and excited for their march into the postseason. As always, thanks for listening, and Happy New Year.
If you are hurt or disabled, you may be entitled to benefits from an insurance company or Social Security. I'm Chris Helmer, an attorney at Clark Fork Law Offices. Our Missoula firm specializes in worker compensation, personal injury, and Social Security disability. There are many unknowns when injured or disabled. The other side is fighting hard. You should too. Call Clark Fork Law at 728-0168 for a free consultation or visit clarkforklaw.com. Again, 728-0168.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good evening, Ryan Tutel, Colton Nuanez. Here's some sports news for you. The Big Sky Conference basketball schedule opened this week, and all 4 college teams from Montana moved to 2-0 as they swept the opening weekend. The Montana men overcame scoring just 20 points in the first half to emerge with a 52 victory over Sacramento State. That after earning a 79-72 win over NAU on Saturday.
2 days after Montana State drilled Sac State in Bozeman, the Bobcats used a late Layden Ricketts three-pointer as the difference. He also made 2 free throws down the stretch in a 63-61 win over Northern Arizona. And on the women's side, the Lady Grizz followed up their win at Northern Arizona on Saturday with a 64-60 win at Sac State Monday. And the MSU women, they also are 2-0 after posting a 76-64 win at NAU on the heels of an 85-48 blowout at Sac State.
Grizzly basketball players also swept the first Conference Player of the Week awards as Lady Grizz sophomore forward Abby Anderson averaged 17.5 points and 6.5 rebounds per game to earn her first ever weekly award. Meanwhile, UM senior Saeed Pridgett won the men's weekly award for the 4th time in his career, averaging 20.5 points and 9 rebounds, as well as 2.5 steals in the 2 Grizz wins. He had 27 and 10 against NAU.
And finally, Lady Grizz hosts Southern Utah tonight, tip 7 o'clock. Men are on the road. Montana State, they take on Northern Colorado.
This ESPN Sports Center is presented by Clark Fork Law.
Resolutions for us, for yourselves, and for Montana State football. What should they be? It's Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. SWX Montana Television, great to be with you. 329-1899 is the phone number. All guests join us via the Regis Brothers RV phone line. We want your calls. 329-1899. Give us a call. Tell us what your resolution would be for yourself, for us, or for Cat or Grizz football in the year 2020, which is now upon us. 329-1899 on those. Also, at Gus Tutel on Twitter, if you would like to tweet them. You can do that as well. You want to listen live? 1029ESPN.com. You go there. You listen live via the Listen Live tab, and it is available thanks to Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. Also, if you missed anything in the first hour, the podcast rolls on. The Tutel Nuanez podcast available wherever you get your podcast, and it is there thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. Colter, the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl. Just getting ready to get going. The Tennessee Volunteers, they are hyped, buddy. I think Indiana's in for trouble. The Volunteers get rolling downhill tonight. Let's go. You know what would be fun to play? In what city are the bowls? Like, tell me the bowl game, and I'll guess what city it's in. I like my chances of getting the Birmingham Bowl. That's about it. There's a lot of these things. I got no idea. I mean, the Gator Bowl, you could presume, is not being played in Maine, but it's fun game. Anyway, we're not going to do that right now. We're going to do resolutions. Coulter, do you make New Year's resolutions?
I always do. I was thinking about what mine is going to be this year, and
aren't you supposed to do this in December?
I mean, I
implement it.
I am. I'm a very motivated person by personal goals, and I also really, really, really kill myself and beat myself up if I fail at those goals. So it's way more detrimental to my own mindset to make unattainable goals that I will not succeed in. So my number one New Year's resolution is to try to be a little bit better at every element of my life every single day. Not one broad, huge goal. Take it step by step, make it realistic,
and do something today that's a matter of going in the direction you want to go.
I had an epiphany over the break. I asked, it's the end of the decade, and it's kind of the first time we've ended a decade where, first of all, I've been old enough to acknowledge such things. But like we talked about last week, the 2000 to 2009 decade was such a weird thing because in the 20th century, every decade had such a defined era, and people just remembered it nostalgically. When it became the 80s, we were remembering the 60s as the 60s. When it became the 90s, we're remembering the 70s as the 70s. And then we spent all of the 2000s remembering the 80s and the 90s, but no one was really acknowledging the decade that was happening, and then it kind of just got washed away, and now we can kind of look back on the last 20 years. And I think that in itself is striking. But so we were putting together a whole bunch of stuff for Skyline Sports, including our Montana State All-Decade team, which came out yesterday, and our Montana All-Decade team will come out tomorrow. And I was asking my brother, what's the best story I've written since we launched Skyline Sports? And I don't know if it was the greatest compliment or the biggest insult I've ever received, but he said, I have no idea, they're all the same. So in other words, he's saying they're either all excellent or you haven't gotten any better. And that in itself is crazy. And then I watched a couple movies yesterday, but one of them was Adaptation, which is a Nicolas Cage movie from the early 2000s, but it's written by Charlie Kaufman, who's one of the famed screenwriters in Hollywood, wrote multiple Academy Award nominated films. But in that book, in that movie, the screenwriter is trying to turn a book into a movie, and he's talking about stretching himself as a writer. And I was thinking about how I haven't actually taken very many risks as a writer in a really long time. So who knows? Maybe we'll shake things up.
Oh, boy. I like this, Coulter.
I seem to don't hold any punches on this show, though, because you guys just make me so mad with all this bowl of FBS talk.
Winds you up so much. I have made resolutions in the past at New Year's. I don't recall exactly what they were. This shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone who's ever known me or ever listened to this show. I'm not great at sticking to resolutions. And as such, but I don't beat myself up about them. That's the one thing I maybe would say in favor of myself.
Failed, whatever, water under the bridge.
Exactly. It's a great way to be. You know why Denmark was set as the happiest country on earth? You know, they do these things, who's the happiest?
Sure.
Denmark, the Danes. You know why?
Because they don't have to pay for anything?
Low expectations. And so they're constantly being surpassed because they think, well, it's probably going to be cloudy and rainy. Hey, it's cloudy but not rainy. What a great day.
So this is why I'm always so cynical on this show, because then anytime anything makes me not cynical, it's just thrilling.
Like, I got things that I want to do better. Sure. And sometimes I do them, and sometimes I don't.
Don't you worry about being close to death and regretting that?
No. No, that's the beauty of it. I don't really regret. I just, could I have attained something more? I don't know. I don't know that I could have spent any more time with my kids, though, than I have, and I think that's probably about as good as I'm going to do, So that's all right. But here is the thing. I do think that there are moments that you have to have self-reflection. I don't know why it has to be January 1, though. That's my thing. I understand, the kind of the washing away of some stuff and doing that whole deal. And I actually think there's moments where it's really meaningful. It can be meaningful and has been meaningful to people throughout time. And that's good. And it even has been to me at times. But also, I've had more, I guess, experiences of okay, I need to make this change in a moment that was just May the 7th.
Sure.
Because I saw something or I read something or something happened, and it's okay, this is what we got to start doing now. And so, but I guess here's my problem. I need that to be brought on me from the outside. If I bring it up for from within myself, you're a tremendously motivated person. I couldn't be less motivated. Just let me sit, And so I don't need all of that. I'm not good at it. That's the thing I've discovered about myself. At this point in my life, I don't think I'm supposedly in midlife, but I am probably in the middle of my life, right? And so at this point I'm realizing, the things I'm not good at, I accept it about myself. Everybody wants to get better. That's okay. You should get better, and you do get better at some things. But also, if you don't have, I don't want to learn how to play the guitar. I used to. I would love to know how to play the guitar. But if you know how many hours and swear words it would take me to even learn a chord? No chance. So just let it be. It's not what I am. So I just let it go. You know? Okay. What are the things I can do? Yammer on for hours a day. Let me do that. All right. Not surprisingly, on the Twitter machine. By the way, if you want to call with your resolutions, 329-1899, you can. Everybody just wanted to talk about eating and drinking on Twitter. Okay? So, to tell more snacks. Coulter, no drinking until Thanksgiving. That was very telling, like no chance. Now, I will say...
It's because I know who sent that, and it's an inside joke.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Is Thanksgiving a big thing? Here's the deal. You know, now let's be clear. I mean, it's all, you know, within the confines of hopefully some sort of moderation anyway. But you've gone months and months without drinking.
That's why it's an inside joke, because I quit drinking for like 6 months last year just to challenge myself, you know, just to see how it was.
Good for you.
And you did. Actually, it was more like 5 months. But then I welcomed myself back into the drinking world in resounding fashion on Thanksgiving. And
see, that's the thing you got to be careful of, because when you take a long time off, you can't return to your former status.
No, you cannot. And I even though I am a grown adult man, I just did not put that into perspective, and it was an eye opener. People always say, well, what is the first moment you realized you were getting older? Well, that was mine.
That was one?
Yeah.
I still haven't had that moment. Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Coulter.
We can just go so deep with this, but I just don't know if I want people to change the channel or not.
Don't do it. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to continue our resolution talk through the lens of Montana State, specifically football. And resolution, you know, here's the thing about a resolution is it presumes that you have the choice, right? The voluntarism, as it were, to be able to instantiate some change in your own life, and that's why it's supposed to be powerful, because you're in control. You're the agent that's doing this thing. So when we talk about resolutions for football teams, it's a little bit weird because they all want to do the same thing, and that's win the Natty, and only one of them's going to do it, and it's probably going to be North Dakota State. So, but what are the resolutions as you look at the changes that a team should make in this sort of broad form that we're talking about? Now, not like, oh, they, you know, quote unquote, need to find a quarterback, need to find, you know, this particular position coach, whatever it might be. But like, what needs to shift for the Grizzlies, for the Cats, to you as a matter of resolution in the new year?
Interesting. We're talking football, right?
Football. Talking football. Bowl season, buddy.
Man. I mean, the Grizz, I think almost all of their projected improvements will come simply in just upgrading personnel. And I think that I don't know where it's going to happen right away. Coach Hauck has said two things consistently since he took over. Bobby Hauck has said, one, this is going to be a long-term rebuild. He mentioned when he first got hired that he thought this was going to be a 4, 5, 6-year process. He also mentioned throughout the second half of the season that he thought they were way ahead of schedule. But
he said one for sure, maybe 2 years ahead when they all got done.
Right. There's so many different ways to rebuild a program. One thing I think Montana State deserves a ton of credit for is the transfers that they've taken, and by and large how successful they've been. There have been the Tyler Brugmans of the world who came in and was not good at quarterback, and they only lasted half a year, and then he was out.
Yeah,
and that really set their program back. And there was, you know, Nigel Hale and Darren Gardenhider, the two corners from Washington, who got in trouble. But then there's also been Bryce Stirk and Jason Skrimpos and Amandre Williams and Jacquay Allen and a bunch of guys who've stepped in right away and contributed at a high level. Montana, it seems as if they brought in actually quite a few transfers this last offseason, but has more often than not been the case under Coach Hauck. A lot of those transfers did not rise to starting positions, and in fact, a lot of those transfers spurred on other players to take over starting positions. I mean, a guy like Patrick O'Connell emerged because Joe Babros was just okay as kind of an edge guy as a transfer from NC State. Mason Vineyard was nowhere to be found. I believe he was actually even academically ineligible. Those were the two guys from Washington State and NC State, respectively, that they brought in to try to really be edge guys. And Ryder Rice was a contributor this year, but he did not, set the world on fire by any means. And so that kind of opened the door for guys like Patrick O'Connell, which is good. But I think that Montana, I don't know where they need to get still better on the offensive line. The defensive line, I think that even though they need to get better there, they have the pieces there because they have guys they can continue to develop. Braden Deming's only a sophomore. Eli Alford's only a sophomore. Alex Gubner's only a freshman. Jacob McGoring's only a freshman. Those guys all have high-level talent. They all have all-conference potential. So I think that they're good there. They just need to let those guys grow. On the offensive line, I'm not sure. I'm excited to see how rapidly they can develop a lot of their younger offensive linemen because, as we know, Coach Houck wants this to be a developmental program. So how do you get better right away at corner and at offensive line? I'm not sure, and it's going to be up in the air where these guys are at in terms of their developmental process. On Montana State's side, obviously you point to quarterback, but it's just been so interesting to watch how this whole thing has evolved at MSU because they have been so untraditional offensively, but it came to a head down the stretch this year where that being so unorthodox made them then so hard to prepare for. And you might not be able to throw the ball that well, but when you're still churning out 500 yards of offense and you're still rushing for 300 yards a game and you're still scoring 35 to 40 points a game, I'm not really sure why it matters.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get there? I mean, if you can go hang 48 on the biggest game of your season against your rival without throwing the ball.
Doesn't matter how it gets there as long as it gets there.
That's right. So I don't know. I think that Montana State's on a really good track. I think Montana's on a really good track. I don't really know where they could possibly upgrade unless it's just in personnel, and that just all comes down to recruiting.
Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. By the way, Chris Kwasinski going to join us here in about 15 minutes. He's the beat writer for the Southern Utah Thunderbirds men's basketball team. Southern Utah hosting the University of Montana this evening, tipping off at 7 o'clock. So we'll talk to him about that game. But Coulter, I want to talk about this sort of more from like a mentality standpoint on this resolution deal. For Montana, if I can use a boxing metaphor here, believing that you're just better than everybody else is going to get you a lot of wins, but also it's a good way to get knocked out.
Yeah.
And in over the course of a 10 fight season, or however you want to do it, you're going to win a lot, and usually with that mentality. But it also seems like if there isn't the sort of general appreciation that other schools and other teams are working really hard at this as well, and you need to be ready to go in any given scenario, that there's going to be moments where it goes really bad for you. And there's certainly a disanalogy between my metaphor and what actually happens in football, because when you're talking about 100 kids or 50 kids, if you talk about who's actually playing, getting ready for a game, they're all doing their own preparation. They're going out there. So it's not just one person with one idea or mindset. And certainly plenty of players, coaches, etc., are going out and preparing with that in their mind. But in general, Bobby Houck has come and wanted to reinstitute a belief of superiority about what Montana is to everybody else as a matter of reattaining a standard which once existed at the University of Montana. And I understand why you would want to go about it that way. And frankly, I don't know that it's even just a matter of a decision about this is the right way to go about it. This is who Bobby Houck is as a football coach. And so this is what it is. But I do think that failure to acknowledge the shift in the landscape of FCS college football in general and the Big Sky Conference specifically is going to be something that will not be rectified until it's recognized and accepted, and then that's when you can move beyond it. Certainly the personnel is, obviously, I mean, that's one of the things that you're working toward. And then once you get to that point, then you can return, quote-unquote, RTD back to that place that you once were, potentially. But also, the fact is that the landscape has changed. The teams are there's a bunch of teams in the conference that weren't here at all anyways, and there's a bunch of teams that were here that are much better than they were. And so in a conference at which you had to beat, and it could be a couple of different teams, but one or two teams each year, as opposed to 4 or 5 or 6 teams each year to get where you want to go, it's a massive undertaking. And
you're right.
And how much that's acknowledged, it certainly hasn't been acknowledged publicly. I'll say that.
Idaho State really fizzled down the stretch this year.
Yeah.
But Idaho State still won, I think, 4, maybe 5 games. And you say, well, that's not a good year. Idaho State used to win no
0 games.
Yeah, and Jeff Zammerlin won 6 games in 6 years at Idaho State. Like Scott Dowling at Northern Colorado didn't win a conference game. Northern Colorado did not win a conference game for their first 3 years in the league. When Montana State lost at Northern Colorado, it was like the upset of the century because Northern Colorado won its first Big Sky game.
Yeah.
And Weber State was pretty good under Ron McBride, and Rob Ashe was solid at Montana State when Bobby Hauck was at Montana.
Idaho State won 3 games.
You hadn't seen the true arrival on the national scene yet of Eastern Washington. They were good, but not elite yet. There was no coach in the Big Sky like Jay Hill or Dan Hawkins or on down the line, Ed McCaffrey, call it whatever you.
Anderson.
Bo Baldwin being at Cal Poly now. The coaching is significantly better. The playing field is a lot more level, and this happens across college football. This is one of my favorite parts about college football is when one team sets the tone in a league or a region and everybody then tries to catch up. How did Oklahoma resurrect itself? Not resurrect, but how did they overtake Texas? Because they chased Texas. And then once you overtake them, then all of a sudden you're the one being chased. And I think that's what Montana has to really worry about is in a lot of ways, a lot of the Big Sky has not caught Montana, but in a lot of ways they have. I think acknowledging that is essential. I honestly think that the microcosm of the Grizz football team is a microcosm for the university. The acceptance of mediocrity, the lack of institutional, the lack of a quest for institutional elitism is the thing that has really taken a step back at Montana. Excellent, right? Sure. Like from the top down, the mediocrity has been accepted more than it should be. And I think that's been a huge issue with the football program, but also just at the school in general. I just think that part of it is their lack of willingness to address the problems that they have. And I think that on one hand, Bobby Hauck's attitude of not considering the prospect of even losing ever, on one hand, I think that's really good when you're coaching young people because you don't want them to matriculate and then all of a sudden manifest losses or adversity. But on the other hand, it's just the oldest tenet in all of martial arts. You have to respect your opponent. And if you're playing a combat sport, the moment you don't is the moment you get punched in the face. And so I agree with what you're saying.
Well, and I think that the University of Montana has had, as an institution, some really good changes and it has actually addressed some of the stuff that you're talking about and has some spaces in there with some really exciting things going on, some really good momentum, but it takes time for that stuff to, first of all, exist at all, and then for it to sort of express itself in the wider world. And I think that in both the athletic department and in general is, I say with the football team and then with the school in general is happening, but also it's happening in 2 very different ways. It's happening in 2 very different ways. For Montana State, Coulter, this is hard for me, man, in terms of what resolution they need to make. Having a quarterback that you can completely rely on and who can win you football games would be major, obviously. But also, it feels like to me that this was a season that was being built to. So the resolution then is how to not allow this to become complacent or this to be, okay, we achieved the high water mark.
Right.
And, quote unquote, rest on your laurels.
Totally.
To push forward, to continue to be even better than you were, even as you lose an outstanding group. That's the hard thing to do. And from a mentality standpoint, to try and pull that off for Jeff Choate, I think is the real challenge to me. And the resolution that you got to have is that we've been working up to this point, but we only worked up to this point to get it as a foundation to move to the next point. And I think that's incredibly hard. I don't know how to do that, but that to me is the resolution that you got to have, to be expectant and preparing to move even beyond what you've done. And it's not just about, the national semifinal. It's about, as a team, being even better than you were, even more dominant than you were, even, and so on and so forth, and finding ways to, they went to the national semifinal, did not win the Big Sky Conference.
That's exactly it. That's what I was going to say. I think that they have a obvious
30 seconds
motivating factor, because they went as far as any team has gone in their school's history in the last 35 years, but they didn't win a trophy. They didn't get a ring. And I think that is going to be the next motivation. I think the other thing is they built this whole thing on those Washington transfers and Jacque Ayala. I mean, those guys were huge boosts to the defense.
Yeah.
How do you replace Bryce Stirk and Jason Skripos and Jacque Ayala? And that's going to be hard.
Stutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. We move from resolutions about 2020 into the first basketball game of 2020. Specifically tonight, the Grizzlies men's team on the road at Southern Utah. The Lady Grizz at home in Missoula. The Lady Cats at home in Bozeman. The men on the road from Montana State at Northern Arizona. But Chris Kwasinski going to join us. He is the beat writer for Southern Utah's men's basketball team. Going to break down this game for us right after this. Colter, it's still the holiday season. People still traveling. Maybe you have friends, family staying over. Wherever you got to go. Also, you got business, conferences that you got to hold, meetings and so forth. The Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. It's a great spot right off the highway, near the airport, traveling. Great resources as well for rooms, breakfast, pool, the whole thing. They're going to help you in any way that you need.
This time of year, people are generally getting their next year ready to go. Right. A lot of meetings and stuff like that. And so if you're a consistent business traveler, go check out the Wingate by Wyndham, because their business travel rates for loyal customers, they never change. And so you can get the same price whether it's January or the summertime or Christmas time. As long as you're a loyal rewards member, they got you covered. The Missoula Wingate by Wyndham, great meeting space, whether you have a meeting for 2 or 200. They can get you all hooked up. So let the Wingate by Wyndham make you feel at home even when you're not.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters, and you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
There's a saying, opportunity never knocks twice. When you're ready to take advantage of your next opportunity, look to your local bank. Opportunity Bank of Montana. Opportunity Bank offers options for mortgage loans, small business loans, equipment financing, agriculture, and more. Our experienced team can provide solutions to help you welcome your next big opportunity. There's nothing like the feeling of progress. So let's get started today. Come see us at your local Opportunity Bank of Montana. OpportunityBank.com, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Sometimes it's stressful juggling all your responsibilities on the weekends. You know you need to do your chores, you know you want to spend time with your family, but really, you just want to watch football all day. Paradise Falls is the perfect option for a family-friendly place to hang out and still have a chance to catch all the games. Open 7 a.m. till midnight and offering breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Paradise Falls has 30 big screen TVs, ESPN3 capabilities, and much, much more. Swing on by Paradise Falls on Brook Street anytime you're in the mood for some food or some football. Paradise Falls, 3621 Brook Street, Missoula's coolest hotspot. Have you been in an accident and have no idea what to do? I'm here with Catherine from the Advocates Injury Attorneys.
Unfortunately, people are injured in accidents every day, and dealing with the insurance company can add even more pain to an already bad situation. That is where hiring the Advocates can help. Let us guide you through the process and take on the hassles for you so you can just focus on getting better.
If you've been injured in an accident, give the Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. The Advocates are on your side.
side.
Marshawn in the backfield. Marshawn goes up over the top. He's in. Touchdown, Seahawks.
The Seahawks hit the road and travel to Philadelphia to take on Carson Wentz and the Eagles in the Wild Card Playoffs. Join Steve Rabel and Dave Wyman this Sunday. Pre-game at noon. Kickoff at 2:40. Right here on the Seahawks Radio Network.
Russell steps up in the pocket. Looks. Still looking. Now he fires. Ball is caught. Touchdown, Seahawks.
Hey y'all, Ryan Tutel here from Tutel and Nuanez, and you heard it right there. The Seattle Seahawks in the wild card round on the road at the Philadelphia Eagles this Sunday. Kickoff at 2:40 Mountain Standard Time. We will have the entire game for you, including pre- and post-game, right here on 102.9 ESPN Radio Sunday afternoon. We here at ESPN are proud to be the Seahawks affiliate in Western Montana and excited for their march into the postseason. As always, thanks for listening and Happy New Year.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tutel, Colton Nuanez. Here's some sports news for you. The Big Sky Conference basketball schedule opened this week, and all 4 teams from the state of Montana are 2-0 as they swept opening weekend. Montana men overcame, scoring just 20 points in the first half to emerge with a 52-50 win over Sacramento State. That after they won 79-72 over NAU.
2 days after Montana State drilled Sac State and Bozeman, the Bobcats used a late Layden Ricketts three-pointer and a pair of Layden Ricketts free throws as the difference in a 63-61 win over Northern Arizona. On the women's side, the Lady Grizz followed up their win at NAU on Saturday with a 64-60 win at Sac State on Monday. And the Montana State women are also now 2-0 in conference play after posting a 72-64 win at NAU and an 85-48 win at Sac State.
Grizzly basketball players also swept the first Conference Player of the Week award as Lady Grizz sophomore forward Abby Anderson averaged 17.5 points and 6.5 rebounds per game to earn the first weekly award of her career. Meanwhile, UM senior Saeed Pridgett won the men's weekly award for the 4th time in his career by averaging 20.5 points, 9 rebounds, and 2.5 steals in the 2 Grizz wins that included 27 points and 10 rebounds against NAU.
And finally, Lady Grizz hosts Southern Utah at the Adams Center tonight, while the men are on the road at Cedar City. The Montana State teams take on Northern Colorado.
ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television statewide. Appreciate you all being with us. We go now to the Rangitsch Brothers RV phone line, and we welcome in sports writer from the Spectrum and Daily News in St. George, Utah. He covers Southern Utah athletics and the men's basketball team specifically tonight. Chris Kwasinski joining us. Hi, Chris. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, we're certainly happy to have you here. We appreciate you doing this with us. And tell you what, it's been quite a year to cover the Southern Utah Thunderbirds men's basketball team. 8-4, already a double overtime win over Nebraska. And, I mean, close game after close game. And they're winning most of those, including a 2-point win over Portland State in the Big Sky Conference home opener. What have you seen out of Southern Utah here throughout the first 12 games of the year?
So far, I've seen a team that has really flipped the script of their season. And I know a lot of people can say, okay, they're 8-4. That's really great, especially for a mid-major team like SUU coming out of the gate, finishing non-conference play. But if you ask them, they're looking at this as more of a glass half empty as a glass half full. Because 2 games that really stand out to me as really stung is the loss to BYU was a game where they shot over 12 from 3, and that really hurt them. And it was just part of the season as it started on. They really struggled from the 3-point land, and that came up and got them again against Loyola Marymount, where they only scored 51 points. So you look at this team, they're looking much better offensively. The win over Utah Valley was a change, really just changing the game for them, and they're on a roll now. That win over Portland State was a culmination of how far they've come to get here, especially with a game-winning 3 by Trey Marine at the winning seconds of the game. It's a team that's catching fire.
Thanks so much for being with us, Chris. We appreciate it. I know that since Todd Simon took over, it's been sort of a defined strategy. He's brought in a ton of transfers, and each of the last couple of years, a lot of those guys have had to sit out until the semester when they got eligible. And so then the early part of Big Sky Conference play has been sort of a work in progress, but so Utah has been as good as anybody in the league. down the stretch. In the Big Sky Tournament, I think they've won 5 games over the last 3 years, which is as many as anybody with the exception of Weber State, Montana, and Eastern Washington. So, but it seems to me like this roster is a little bit more solid. They returned Cameron Aluaton and Andre Adams and Dwayne Morgan and Dre Marine, who you just mentioned. So, I mean, how much more continuity do you think there is than maybe in past years at Southern Utah?
You know, it's interesting you say that because this is the first season where these transfers have really gotten to play with each other, and I think there's a lot to be said for that, and I think we saw a lot of those struggles because of that. That continuity really wasn't carried over until this year, but when you look at players like you just mentioned, like Andre Adams, Dwayne Morgan, guys have been playing here for a couple of years, and we're also transfers as well, so they know what it's like to be a transfer. They're really helping the other guys kind of get acclimated being a part of the system, but like you mentioned, Todd Simon's going to have these guys ready for conference play. I mean, you saw in the Big Sky Tournament the last couple of years making the semifinals and whatnot. He always has them ready, and it's hard to count against them, especially when they have as much depth and as much talent as they do on this roster.
You know, when you talk about the depth and the talent, but what kind of basketball do they like to play? Obviously, Southern Utah has been scoring points in bunches here recently, but what is the style that is defining this team so far?
Honestly, you mentioned the points, but I think they're just a defensive team. That's what they hang their hat on. That's what makes them so good, and I think that's what led them to a couple of their big wins this year. I mean, if you look at their offense back in December 4th, they were 64th in the nation in points per game. But if you took out their 2 big wins against West Coast Baptist and Bethesda, they were averaging all the way back at 295th in the nation in points per game. If you take out which are basically de facto exhibition games, but defensively is what they hang their hats on. I mean, they're holding teams to under 60 points a couple times against. I believe it was Long Beach State is where they really cracked down and. Sometimes they might slip up against like Portland State, but that's where the offense coming into play has really come full circle. I mean, they really struggled from beyond the arc to start the season. The first 5 games, I think, against Division I schools, they shot 22% in the last 5 games. Now they're shooting 64% for 3. So it's a team that can play any kind of basketball. They're so deep, they're so rangy, they got all kinds of tight. But when it comes down to defense, that's what kind of team they are.
Chris Wazinski joining us. He's a sports reporter for the Spectrum and Daily News in St. George, covers Southern Utah. They're hosting Montana coming up here in about 90 minutes from now. And, interesting, Chris, that the Grizzlies, they've been, the cream of the crop in the Big Sky Conference the last couple of seasons. But they've also been one of the most veteran teams the last couple of seasons, and that all changes this year. I think 5 seniors and 3 juniors at least on the roster for Southern Utah, and Montana has been starting at times 3 true freshmen on this team. When you look at the matchup tonight, what do you see?
I see it. I see. I guess the change, not the changing of the guard, but the opportunity for that. I mean, when you look at Montana, like you said, it's the cream of the crop of the Big Sky. And if SUU wants to be at that level, a lot of people were expecting this team to compete for a Big Sky championship to start the season with the kind of talent they had. If you're looking to be that kind of a championship team, you have to win this game tonight at home against a top team. I mean, Saeed Pridgett, obviously was my pick, the media pick for the Big Sky Player of the Year. So he's clearly going to be the best player on the court tonight. But you have, like you've mentioned, Cam Aluaton earlier, also John Knight III, guys that can make a difference on the court at any given night. And if SUU needs to win, or if they're going to win, those guys need to step up and not only play well defensively, but actually need to execute offensively. You can't let Montana get into a groove defensively, because that's what Saeed, I know, is a player that's been able to hang his hat on defensively recently. So when you look at the court tonight, it's all going to come down to whoever plays the most complete basketball.
You mentioned the fact that this team has a lot of talent. I think that Southern Utah has had talent the last couple of years. Ever since Todd Simon took over, he's done a great job of bringing in some top-line guys when you're analyzing it from the lens of an all-league type level. But I think that outside of their camp, I think Southern Utah's had a hard time establishing itself as a real contender in the eyes of the media and the eyes of other Big Sky Conference followers. So, I mean, does this team, do you feel like they do have Big Sky expectations? Because I think that the trajectory they've been on, they should. But, I mean, what's that process been like for them trying to prove themselves on a league level? And do they believe internally they can win the league?
Yeah, I think they believe they can win the league, especially with the new transfers and stuff. And I think that belief really came to a peak last year when they made the semifinals with a team that was missing Dwayne Morgan. He missed most of the season. I think around this time last year he got injured, missed all of conference play. So they missed a lot of key pieces, and they still won the most games since like 2006 or 2007. So even with that kind of team, they were able to rally off and really just rattle off wins, win games on the road, at home, beat Big Sky teams. So if they can, I think the idea is that they can do that then. They can do that now with a much more talented and deep roster. They just need to be able to come together and play as a team instead of maybe playing solo ball or maybe taking bad shots. They just need to be able to realize what kind of talent they have and just go execute.
Well, Chris, we certainly appreciate you being with us. We're looking forward to basketball, the conference slate of the basketball season. Enjoy the game tonight, and we'll catch up with you down the road, all right?
Sounds like a plan. Thanks for having me on, guys.
You got it. Chris Kwasinski, sports reporter for the Spectrum and Daily News in St. George, covering Southern Utah. We appreciate that. Again, 7 o'clock tip in Missoula for the Lady Grizz, in Bozeman for the Lady Cats, Montana State hosting Northern Colorado, and then on the road, the men tonight in Greeley for Montana State and in St. George. Well, actually, in Cedar City, technically. Cedar City against Southern Utah. So looking forward to those games. Quick break. On the other side, which NFL game are we most looking forward to? It is Wild Card Weekend. There are 4 of them. I can't wait for all of them, but is there one specifically? Well, yes, there is. There is one specifically that I'm looking forward to. And also, it's basketball season in the NBA. Shoe deals are getting done. Coulter, who you signing with? We'll answer that question right after this. Hey, it's a new year. With all the resolutions, one of the best things you can do is start fresh by starting clean. A clean environment will help inspire you to do great things. So start fresh and clean your car inside and out with Shine Auto Detailing. Take pride in your ride and schedule a full interior detail with Shine Auto Detailing. Most of their clients, they make their car cleaner than it was when they bought it new. Schedule online at shineautodetailing.net. Mention you heard it here with Tutel Nuanez, and they'll throw in an extra $20 winter windshield treatment for free. Make your winter driving safer in the winter. It was coming down earlier today. It's going to come down for months, people. Go to shineautodetailing.net to schedule right now. Shineautodetailing.net.
Hey, it's Coulter, and I'm here with Catherine from The Advocates. If you've been in a car accident or need help dealing with the insurance companies, you should give The Advocates a call. They can tell you if you have a case right over the phone.
That's right. It doesn't cost anything to call, and we'd be happy to talk to you and assess your situation. You don't want to have to deal with contacting the insurance companies and setting up a claim. We can do that for you. We take the hassle out of the process, so you can just focus on getting better.
There you go, folks. If you've been injured in an accident, give The Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve The Advocates. Hey there, Coulter Nuanez from your favorite daily sports talk show, Tutel Nuanez. I'm here with Tom from Aspen Sound. Tom, last winter I got a sweet car starter. It's something I think everybody needs.
You know, Coulter, I couldn't agree more, and my wife sure thinks so too. We've got a lot of sweet deals. We actually have it capable now where you can start it from your phone from anywhere you'd like. We have two-way remotes that'll confirm to you the vehicle started, all the way down to our basic package starting at just $299 installed. Come on in and check us out.
Feel the music at Aspen Sound.
Hey, thank you for helping make it another terrific year at the Good Food Store. We recognize and truly appreciate just how often so many of you visit the store, and we want you to know that your loyalty allows the Good Food Store to pay it forward to the local partners that make Missoula such a caring, creative, and healthy community. With every organic apple and every espresso you buy, you help contribute to Meals on Wheels, Watson Children's Shelter, the Clark Fork Coalition, the Big Sky Documentary Film Festival, the Missoula Symphony, and to many, many others. So thank you from all of us at the Good Food Store.
Marshawn in the backfield. Marshawn goes up over the top. He's in. Touchdown, Seahawks.
The Seahawks hit the road and travel to Philadelphia to take on Carson Wentz and the Eagles in the Wild Card Playoffs. Join Steve Rabel and Dave Wyman this Sunday. Pre-game at noon. Kickoff at 2:40. Right here on the Seahawks Radio Network.
Russell steps up in the pocket. Looks. Still looking. Now he fires. Ball is caught. Touchdown, Seahawks.
Hey, y'all, Ryan Tutel here from Tutel Nuanez, and you heard it right there. The Seattle Seahawks in the wild card round on the road at the Philadelphia Eagles this Sunday. Kickoff at 2:40 Mountain Standard Time. We will have the entire game for you, including pre- and post-game, right here on 102.9 ESPN Radio Sunday afternoon. We here at ESPN are proud to be the Seahawks affiliate in Western Montana and excited for their march into the postseason. As always, thanks for listening, and Happy New Year.
Most of my family, they never graduated high school, so I'm trying to break that barrier. My daughter, Brooklyn, was also a motivation for me to go back to school. Every day after work, went straight to school, and it paid off.
At age 26, Kareem finished his high school diploma.
I could not have done it alone. I see the future is really bright for me.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Tutel and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
Happy New Year's, boys and girls. New Year. Happy New Year.
Got a black magic woman.
Say New Year's sometimes. It's Tutel and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Outstanding to be with you. We are broadcasting live, as always, on this very fine Thursday evening. If you missed anything in the show, you can listen on the podcast. Podcast available wherever you get your podcasts. It is there thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. Go rate it, review it, listen to it, download it. We appreciate that. Coulter, do you want to talk shoes or do you want to talk Wild Card Weekend for a moment? We can do both.
Both. You pick.
Okay. We'll get into the shoes in a moment. Here's what I want to know from you. Don't look it up, okay?
Okay.
4 wild card games. I'm going to run through them in chronological order.
Okay.
You tell me which team you think has the biggest number associated with the line. Who's the biggest favorite of the 4 matchups, okay?
Okay.
Bills at Texans.
Okay.
Titans at Patriots.
Okay.
Minnesota Vikings at New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
Seattle Seahawks in Philadelphia.
Patriots.
The Patriots are a 5-point favorite. They are the second most favorite team.
Behind the Saints.
The Saints are 7.5-point favorite over Minnesota.
Yeah, I would put 6.5 to 7.5 for sure.
It is so.
Here's the thing. The Vikings aren't very good unless they have Dalvin Cook, and they need to have the.
Will they have Dalvin Cook, or is
it's a good question. They've been holding him out the last couple of weeks.
They have.
In hopes of getting him back for this game, but they got to have him.
Here's the thing I would say. I will never, ever, ever, ever in any scenario feel bad for the Minnesota Vikings. You go 15-1 and miss a field goal, it makes my day, okay? I don't care about it. But for an NFL football team to go to the postseason and have to play the 13-3 New Orleans Saints on the road in the first game of Wild Card Weekend, that's crazy. I mean, it is such an anomaly that team, as good as they are, with a greater record that they have, is playing this week. That does not happen.
They're the most complete team in the NFL, right?
They are. I think they are. I mean,
the Ravens are like the most hard-nosed and they're like the newest, like freshest team, and Lamar Jackson is certainly the revelation of the year.
Yes.
But I mean, the Saints were way more steady, despite Drew Brees' injury, than the Packers or anybody else in the NFC.
I love the Ravens. I love the Chiefs. I love the Packers. You always talk to me about line play. The Packers lines, both sides, have been really good.
Absolutely, the best in the league.
And I love. I mean, San Francisco's an outstanding team. The best team, when they're all healthy, stem to stern, that I have seen this season is the New Orleans Saints. It's the Saints. So it's crazy. I mean, this is a 1 seed and in a great home environment too. So I don't know. It's what it is for Minnesota. You got to beat it. Hey, what happened last time these two teams played?
Well, they played in the playoffs 3 times this decade, and it's been wild a lot. I mean, they had the Brett Favre interception at the end of the game. They had the Stephon Diggs. The controversial replay. I mean, these two teams have played before, and it's been very wild.
Been great. Of the games I'm looking
one more point, though. Speaking of, I think that I was watching the 49ers against the Seahawks last weekend.
Yes.
And this is such a microcosm of the way that pro sports has evolved. It used to be you pick a team, and whether it's who your dad rooted for or where you're from, or just who, you're from Montana like me, so you just, whoever you first watched as a kid, or like, we have some back family ties. My parents are friends with the old owner of the Vikings, whatever. So, something leads you to your sports fandom, but then it was a badge of honor to maintain your sports fandom through thick and thin, and you identify with the fan base and all this stuff. But now, the entire franchise can completely change in pro sports. Mm-hmm. From the owner to the GMs to the coach. The 49ers now, compared to what the 49ers were in the 90s, are just not even the same thing. There's not the same thing in any element. I was watching the 49ers the other day, and I was like, this is why the concept of fandom has evolved so much in modern life. Because take away the previous allegiances you might have ever had. When I'm watching the 49ers, I'm obsessed with them.
I mean,
I'm obsessed with them.
George Kittle is my favorite football player.
That's what I'm saying. Like from the line play to the fact that they have the gumption to play a true 4 running back set, to a fact that their best offensive players, their fullback, to the fact that they have the most ferocious defensive line in the league.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as what I like about football, they play football exactly how I would want it to be played.
Do you think they're coming out of the NFC?
No.
I don't either. All right, Coulter.
The thing is, Jimmy G's just not quite good enough.
I
like in a one-game scenario when the Niners play any of Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, or Russell Wilson, I just don't know how you pick the 49ers.
I'm looking more forward to the Seahawks-Eagles game because I think it's going to be it might be the best game of the bunch, and it's really it's intriguing to me. And obviously, we follow the Seahawks. I follow the Seahawks very closely. The other game, though, that I'm like sneaky, just beyond interested in is the Titans-Patriots game, man. I mean, the Titans are bringing in number 1 runner in the NFL.
Which is, by the way, my absolute worst take of 2019. Derrick Henry was so bad, and he was on my fantasy team last year, and I made a statement on the show that
was
somewhere
actually a
along
2018 take.
It was a 2018 take that then got thrown in my face and then rubbed the dirt square all over my cornea. I mean, I said that I thought that there was above average chance that Derrick Henry would be out of the league. Yeah, he was washed, and then he went out and rushed for like 250 yards the very next game. And I said, okay, maybe it's an anomaly. And then he went and led the league in rushing this year.
It was remarkable because the day you said that, they were playing that night, which is why we were talking about it. And he went for 200 plus, like
multiple
into the twos.
80-yard runs.
And then
on my fantasy bench,
finished the season averaging like 180 yards a game or whatever it is for the last 3 or 4 games of last year. And then, came in. Now, I always find this, Dalvin Cook would have led, if he had been healthy. So, and look, the best what?
The best ability is availability, baby.
So, I mean, give the big fella, let him get out there and do it. But the Patriots, this is such an interesting phenomenon to me. What have the Patriots always been? First month of the season, okay to actually just not even very good. And then, like, pretty good. And then December, January, no doubt.
Right.
Slam the door.
Totally.
The exact opposite has happened with this team.
Totally.
They were lights out. And they did not play a hard schedule,
they did not.
Granted. But their defense is still absolutely legit. Okay, this isn't all of a sudden the Patriots don't have a good defense. But their defense is not so much better than every other defense, all the other great defenses in the league, say San Francisco, even maybe Baltimore, whatever. And all of a sudden, the susceptibility, especially when you lose at home in the way that they do, where they never lose games that they need to win. And now we're playing this week against the Titans, right? Nobody thinks one thing about the Titans, and it's Vrabel. I mean, this is so interesting to me, man. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pick Tennessee or whatever, but I'm going to tell you that it's not. I'm not coming anywhere close to touching this football game. I just got to sit back and watch it happen. And maybe the Patriots go out and do it. They win by 35 and shut everybody up.
Wouldn't it be the most Patriots thing in the world?
It would. It would.
I mean, what do they?
Unless it's the end, Coulter. Unless it's the end.
Yeah, we talked about that last year too. I mean, getting close to the end, whatever. I mean, there's
Tom
a lot.
Brady still owned his house at that time.
There's always been this narrative that the Patriots get their butts kicked in a game early on purpose, that like Belichick doesn't prepare them adequately, so then he can use that against the team for the next 2 months. You know what happens when we don't prepare right? We lose 41-24 to the Chiefs like they did a couple years ago in the first game or whatever, I mean, it just would be the most Patriots thing ever that everybody's picking against them, and that because they fizzled down the stretch of the regular season.
There is zero chance that happened last week. Like, last week was a straight loss in a game that they put everything into to try and win, and they lost to a bad football team, period.
Well, I mean, and the Patriots and North Dakota State have such parallels because on one hand, regular season success is so important to set yourself up for home games in the postseason, and North Dakota State has never had to go on the road during the FCS playoffs, and the fact that they just sit in Fargo until they go to Frisco, there's no way to say that they don't deserve it, but you'd have no idea what it would be like otherwise. It's the same thing with the Patriots. The Patriots have always figured out a way, no matter what the quality of their team, to ham and egg their way to a first-round bye so they can get fresh and then have somebody come to Foxborough. And it's been very rare that they've had to go on the road. Now, even if they win, they're going to have to go to Arrowhead, and they're going to have to go to Baltimore, pending an upset. But either way, they're going to have to be on the road most likely. That's it's a pretty interesting circumstance. We'll see how it goes. Even if the Patriots go one and done and they lose to the Titans, it's still not over.
It's not over until Brady says
the first 12. The thing about this team is the first 12 weeks of the season, they had a historically good defense, and then this is how offensive. Being anemic on offense really can hinder the entire production of your team. Because to me, it just looks like the defense has not played at that absolute elite level because the offense hasn't been able to do much of anything. They just don't have very many players because the Antonio Brown thing didn't work out and the Josh Gordon thing did not work out. And so they don't have weapons, but they're going to get weapons. They always get weapons.
I love the way this sets up on Wild Card Weekend with the Bills-Texans there as the appetizer. A game which you already know what's going to happen. The Bills will win this game because there's no chance that the Texans win a playoff game. It's not possible. Not in this universe.
Isn't it even more impossible for the Bills? Was that time the Bills won a playoff game like 1995?
To get into the playoffs. It's impossible for the Houston Texans to miss the playoffs. They get there every time, and then they're out. That's it.
I mean, you weren't even in high school.
They usually win one and go out.
The Bills won a playoff game.
No, I remember watching.
When's the last time the Bills won a playoff game? Seriously, 1994, 1995.
I mean, during they won a couple, if I recall correctly, in the early 90s.
They did.
Mid 90s. We didn't really get to the shoe conversation. Perhaps tomorrow. Yeah, man, I loved the Bills back in the day. My best friend, dude, in Santa Fe, New Mexico, huge Bills fan. We watched the Bills relentlessly. That tragedy every year. That all changes on Saturday, though. They run the Texans out the gym. Boys and girls, fun show one for 2020. Thanks for being with us. We appreciate it very much. We'll be back here tomorrow. A 2-day work week. I'm into that. Can we go? Maybe that's my resolution from the year. 2-day work week. I'm into it. I think we'll also go for it. We'll see you tomorrow.
And the homie Ricky Wall take a picture. Them was my neighbors in 96. R.I.P. Dwight Clark, the cat. I'm a Niner forever like Rice and Locke.
'Tis the season for a festive holiday feast at the Montana Club with mouthwatering dishes like our cranberry brie walnut tarts and pork Diane, or savor our Chardonnay salmon